meeting of the Board of Education is called to order. This evening we have some wonderful special guests with us who are going to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. And I'm going to call their name, and as I do, maybe they move up to the table here in front of the microphones. Okay, so we're going to start with Jessica Milton. Hi, Jessica. Colton Potter. Hi, Colton. Braylon Jackson. Gavin Hendershot. Oh, I like the hair, Gavin. Owen Allen. Morgan Pearson. Faith Ruth. Do I have everyone? I know there were two that couldn't be with us. And these students are all pre-K students at Martinsville Elementary School. So if everyone will stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Make lots of noise.
Can you stay there just a minute? I know some of you have your parents with you and family members, brothers and sisters. Would each of you like to, well, let's start. Jessica, would you like to maybe introduce with you here tonight? Okay, would Mommy and Daddy and everyone she just mentioned stand up so we can, wonderful. Thank you for coming. All right, Colton Potter, would you like to introduce anyone to us? Some, would Colton's relatives stand up? There you go. Thank you, relatives, thanks, welcome. Braylon, do you have someone special to introduce? Mommy and stand, please. Yay. Okay, Gavin. Okay, stand, please. Wonderful. Let's see. Owen, who do you have with you this evening? Mom? Could Mom stand up? And Nanny. Okay. Welcome, Morgan.
I have my mom and my brother.
Okay, would Mom and brother stand up? And Faith?
Hey, Mom.
Hey, Mom. Here's Mom. Hey. Thank you so much. And Dr. Newcomer here is the principal at Martinsville. Would you like to maybe tell us a little something about the program there?
Sure. This is our first year for a pre-K program, and we have a morning and afternoon session. These boys and girls are all from our afternoon session, and they're doing a great job this year. In fact, I think I was just talking to Jessica and asking her one of the things that they do that I've never heard done anyplace else is they sing the alphabet backwards. Jessica was singing that for me. Would you like to sing that, Jessica? Do that real quick for her.
CYXWVUTSIQPONM LKJIACFEDCBA. Now I know my VY exists. That's you guys the clip.
Yay! So I will tell you, I can't even do that. So Thank you for letting us come.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. What a great reason.
I also want to introduce Ms. Sherry Rimsberg, who is our paraprofessional with the program. The teacher, Denise Swain, could not be here tonight. Her son has a sporting event. So Sherry is here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a wonderful way to start our evening and our meeting. And all the family, you don't need to stay. You're welcome to stay. We'd love to have people in the audience, but if you'd like to take a moment and before we start the rest of our meeting and leave, that's all right as well. Thank you. While they're moving out, let's go ahead and approve the agenda.
Madam President, I move for the approval of the agenda as presented by the Agenda Planning Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Fisher, thank you. Discussion. The question is on Dr. Harding's approval of the agenda. All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
Yes, Madam President, I move for approval of the minutes of the closed session held on Tuesday, April 7th, 2015, the work session held that same day, April 7th, 2015, and also the business meeting for that day, Tuesday, April 7th, 2015.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Question is on Mrs. Williams' motion. All those in favor? Thank you. 7-0. All right, we're moving to the public comment part of the tonight's meeting. We have two people signed up. A Mr. James Doyle, if you would come forward, please. And each person wishing to address the Board of Education may address any topic concerning Washington County Public Schools except personnel and student matters, which clearly identify an individual or individuals. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. And would you introduce some of your other special guests that you've brought with you this evening?
That I'm honored to have with me.
Yes.
These are 3 members of our chess club that we started at the local public library. This is Maverick, and this is Andrew, and Alicia. And they're going to help me. They're going to hold up. They're going to help me with the presentation. Actually, hold up a board.
Could everyone sit down so you're near the mic?
Yeah, sure.
That would be really great.
Okay. Should I just put this? Can I put this in the front?
You can. Thank you.
And I apologize in advance. I'm not much of a public speaker, but thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
I sent everyone, I believe, an email today with lots of links to studies and research papers and videos. That email really has the content. It's just impossible in 3 minutes to talk about the benefits of chess in education. But I would like to highlight a few things. They're sitting right here. And I'd like to tell you about what other school systems around the country are doing, other public school systems are doing with chess, most in their schools, most notably in New York City with chess in the schools. They have a wonderful program. They've been teaching chess in their public schools since the 1980s. And they teach, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 5,000 children in their public schools. And I believe most of them, if not all of them, are in Title I schools in the different boroughs in New York City. I went up to New York and went through their teacher training program. And what they're doing at their offices in Midtown Manhattan, what they're doing with chess up there, and the kids that I met is just inspiring. And I really think that we can do some of those things here. And we're doing some of those things now with a library program that we started in February. And I'd like to talk very briefly about some of the things that we've done with that program. Recently, we started the program in February, and earlier this month, we took the kids down to the U.S. Naval Academy to play the midshipmen in chess. This was the first time the Academy has ever done anything like that. And it was just wonderful. If you, in the email, I provided a link to a wonderful story that WHAG-TV did. They sent a reporter down with us. And that will tell the whole story. The kids had just such a wonderful time. And the whole purpose of that trip was not only to deepen their interest in chess, but the purpose was to get the kids to start thinking about college while still in elementary school. And I asked the midshipmen to talk to the kids about what it took for them to get to the academy and what it's going to take for them to get to college. And the unique thing about this opportunity was that they were able, over a game of chess, to have one-on-one, to have a meaningful conversation with a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy. And they can tell you about the experience. They were all there. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is last weekend, I've been training as a tournament director with the United States Chess Federation. Last weekend, I went to the to the Maryland Elementary School Chess Championships in Baltimore. We had 322 children there. Maryland has a very active chess association, but everything is located down in Baltimore or Washington. There's nothing available in terms of scholastic chess for our kids here in Western Maryland. So I'm here tonight to ask you to at least think about maybe creating these opportunities that other kids in the state have for chess. And I would encourage you to read some of the studies that I included to understand the benefits. The library has been very supportive. They've seen the positive impact it's having on the kids, and they've already asked me to extend the program into next year, the fall and spring, offering 2 14-week semesters. I'd like to push this opportunity out to more kids, pre-K through high school, and that's why I'm here.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you, Mr.
thank you.
Doyle. Would your friends like to make a few comments?
Actually, want to say something?
Anything
Well, I
you'd
think
like
they
to
would respond
share
to
with
questions.
us about your experience at the Naval Academy?
Yes, and this is Andrew. He was, well, I think he was the only person from Washington County to go to the elementary school chess championships, and it was his first tournament, and he came back with a trophy. So, Andrew, do you
Andrew?
want to talk about the academy, or? He's a little shy.
Okay.
Maverick, do you want to talk about the Naval Academy? Did you have a good time?
Yeah.
You did? What was fun about it?
That you got to play the midshipmen.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you remember from the experience?
That they're
Has to probably come down just a little bit. Stand. There you go.
I remember when we were there playing the midshipmen, I saw all the other people and they looked like they were having a good time.
Excellent. Good. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I
my pleasure.
appreciate
Thank
the
you for giving me this
opportunity to
opportunity.
share with us.
I look forward to hearing from you.
Very good. Thank
Thank you.
you. Okay, next signed up is a Mr. Roger Torres. If you'd like to come forward. It's kind of a hard act to follow all of these children, but welcome.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, good evening, Board President, Board members. My name is Roger Torres, and I would like to speak tonight about the RFP number 2015-30 regarding the lease of 130 multifunctional units for the school system. I am a representative of Canon Solutions America, who is the current vendor. Additionally, I have 4 children that attend the Washington County Public School System. Our specific concern is related to the proposed recommendation to award this bid to the Phillips Office Solutions as the lowest cost responsive and responsible bidder. The spec requirements mandatory on page 15 under consumable supplies clearly states that all supplies, including staples, should be included on the bidder's response. I do have a copy of the here with me that specifically talks about page 15 of the response. According to the information that was going to be provided to the board as supplied by Mr. Richard Wright, communicated to me yesterday, it clearly states that the Phillips Office Solutions proposal does not include the cost of staples, which staff estimates will cost an average of $22,000 per year times 5, which is $113,000 for the term of the lease procured separately from the contract that was submitted as a response. Our concern is two things. Staples are very costly consumable, which were included as requirement in our bid specification. We have taken on and accounted for the exposure of an unlimited usage that does not allow for us to bill separately on the actual usage basis, as is now part of the purchasing recommendation.
Mr. Torres,
Yes,
could
ma'am.
I interrupt just a minute? And I apologize. I'm a little concerned that as you get into some of these details here, that you're getting close to possibly having a concern with a vote that is going to happen later tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
So you may be getting ahead of the process. And I would suggest that if this is a prelude to a bid dispute, that we probably need to stop the conversation at this point, and you would need to speak with Mrs. Freeman about the correct appeal process for any type of outcome that you disagree with. At this point, the board has not voted on this consent agenda. We certainly appreciate you bringing information and concern to us, but we have to be very careful about any possible bias or information different from other bids.
Now, a question is it possible that the reason that I'm here tonight is for at least that the final award of the contract be withheld until further investigation is concluded here?
And that's a question that would be taken up with staff, with Mrs. Freeman. We do have a policy, DJFR, that speaks very precisely to the process with any kind of bid dispute. And I would ask that you head in that direction.
Thank you very much.
I would appreciate it, and thank you for
Have a
coming
good evening.
this evening.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public response to either of these speakers by my colleagues? All right, we're moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we have the great honor of recognizing two young scholar athletes. These two young men are the first freshmen in Washington County High School history to win a state championship in wrestling. In just a moment, I'm going to ask Aaron Brooks to come forward, who won the 113-pound weight class, and Brian Stewart, who won the 126-pound weight class, to come forward. Both of these men are part of a very successful wrestling team at North High School, coached by Greg Slick. Greg, if you would bring your wrestlers forward, board members, if you'd come down front, we're going to give them an award and recognize them for their accomplishments. Brian, if you'll come forward first. Congratulations. We're very proud of you. Do not take any of these guys down, okay? All right. Aaron, congratulations. We're very proud of you.
Congratulations, sir.
How's your brother doing?
Keep it up.
He's better? All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Coach Slick,
One for you.
thank you, and congratulations. Well done. Another great year.
Mr. Wright, thank you.
Whoops, I'm going to shake your hand, and then I'll let Mr. Ridenhour.
Oh, there's great. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Again, for the audience, I'll just
Congratulations.
mention again what Dr. Wilcox said. First freshman in the history of Washington County Public Schools to win a wrestling individual state championship. And we're looking forward to having these guys around for 3 more years. Another round of applause, please.
Board members, thank you very much. If you come back up.
Any other comments?
And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you. We have you a little bit later in the agenda as
Yes,
well.
you do.
Yes, we do. All right. We're now looking at unfinished business. We have the second reading of proposed changes to policy GCBDA, family and medical leave. Mrs. Keller and Mr. Trotta.
Thank you. Good evening. During the first reading of this policy, there were recommended changes to the policy offered by a member of the Board of Education. During the Policy Committee's public work session conducted on April the 8th, the committee endorsed the recommended changes. If you examine the latest draft of this policy, you'll note the wording changes in Article 2 and Article 3, and the inclusion of a new definition for the term work week. Since the first reading, members of the community were requested to provide comments. We have not received any comments. The Policy Committee is recommending the approval of the second reading of policy GCBDA as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trotta. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy GCBDA entitled Family and Medical Leave.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. A second?
Second.
Dr. Hardings, thank you. Mrs. Fisher, would you like to make any comments on your motion?
Just that it obviously did pass on first read, and the only changes were the addition of the definition, as Mr. Trotta said, and some the same very minor grammatical change, I think, in 3 paragraphs or in 3 locations.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Ms. Williams.
Yes, looking at number 4, policy statement and procedures. D, the superintendent is authorized to promulgate an administrative regulation that sets forth the procedures for applying for family and medical leave. And I'm wondering how all of what is no longer going to be in the policy will be addressed, as things like condition of leave, notice and reporting requirements, retention of employee benefits. I wouldn't think that would fall under procedures for applying. It appears that that statement limits the regulations that the superintendent will write to how one applies for that leave. So I'm just wondering if more needs to be in this policy.
I think right now there is a policy which you've seen, was very lengthy, and then the procedures that accompanied that policy, there was a lot of duplication between the two. I think the intention is to set forth the board's stance on family medical leave and to provide some of those basic definitions, and then use the procedures to outline how one is considered to be eligible, and then the procedures that they would follow to how they would get the paperwork, what's going to happen when the paperwork is received, and so forth.
Follow up? No. Ms. Fisher?
I believe also that those items that are going to be put in the regulation are things that could change from time to time. And it's much easier to change a regulation than it is to change the policy.
Yes, Ms. Williams.
I understand that, but again, D addresses the procedures for applying, but says nothing about the conditions of leave or the reporting of leave or any of those things that currently exist in this policy. So perhaps the wording of D needs to be changed so that it does address those things. How would an employee know about those things if the regulations only address how one applies?
We can definitely make some adjustments to that statement if you'd be more comfortable with doing that. We can say that sets forth the procedures for applying and I guess the circumstances surrounding. I mean, we can come up with something
Ms. Hull, let me interrupt. We're on second read. So anything that becomes a significant change basically puts it back into the policy. when we discussed this in the policy committee, did you have concern at that time that this, if I'm understanding Mrs. Williams' question, that there's a concern as to how employees would receive information? And maybe it would help if you explained how the process works now.
Sure. The way the process works now is if we either identify that a staff member needs to be on FMLA based on their absences, or an employee, the ideal situation is the employee contacts us in advance and lets us know that they're going to be out for an extended period of time and they need to use FMLA, or they want to know what FMLA is. At that point, we gather some information. We have to determine first if they're even eligible to apply for family leave. And if they're deemed eligible, then we send them the necessary paperwork. And then there are specific time frames that have to be adhered to for them to be able to return that paperwork to our office. And at that time, if everything is complete, then we issue an approval of family medical leave. And then we track their time from there.
So let me see if I can offer an editorial change by inserting two words that might get at Mrs. Williams' concern, because I understand she's saying that D as it's written simply allows me to promulgate policy relative to the application. So perhaps to resolve that, just this editorial change, because I think everybody intends for me to not only allows me to operate, but to utilize. So why not insert for applying and utilizing family and medical leave? And with that editorial change, I think I have the latitude then to promulgate and address all of the issues that you're talking about.
Would you like an amendment?
Let me just ask a clarification, Mr. Trotta. If we do an amendment on this to add that, would you see this needing to go back to a first read status?
I would not. I see that as just a minor adjustment. The other point I would share with the members of the board, there are hundreds of pages of federal regulations.
Turn the mic around. It's gotten...
There are hundreds of pages of federal regulations that govern this process. So the policy is intended to provide an overview, and the regulation will deal with situations where employees will be filing for that leave, and then a determination has to be made as to whether they qualify for that leave. And once again, there are federal standards that apply. So I see that as a minor adjustment that would not require the rescheduling of a first reading.
Okay. So back to Mrs. Williams. Do you have a motion in there?
I do. Madam President, I move to amend policy GCBDA, number 4, policy statement procedures, item D, to read, the superintendent is authorized to promulgate an administrative regulation that sets forth the procedures for applying for and utilizing family and medical leave.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hirschman? Any further discussion on this amendment? Okay, does everyone understand the amendment at this point, and that it will stay at a second read through? All right, the question is on Mrs. Williams' amendment. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? 5 in favor, 2 opposed. Motion passes. All right, the next item.
We still need to vote on the
main
main motion.
Oh, sorry. We're back to the main motion that Dr. Harding's made. All those in favor? No. Mrs. Fisher made. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Thank you, Mrs. Keller.
Thank you.
All right, on to our second unfinished business consideration, second reading to rescind policy IE, school district organization plan, policy IF, IG. I think those are the three. Mr. Trotta?
Thank you very much. At the Board of Education's public business meeting conducted on April the 7th, the board approved the rescission of policy IE, IF, and IG. Since the first reading, members of the community were provided with an opportunity to provide comments. No comments were received. The policy committee is recommending the second reading of these policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam President, I move to approve the second reading to rescind policy IE, school district organization plan, policy IF, curriculum development, and policy IG, curriculum development, adoption, and review.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. A second?
Second.
Mr. Ridenhour? Ms. Fisher, would you like to add any comments to your motion?
Just simply that these items are all covered in Maryland law and therefore unnecessary to be repeated in our policies.
Okay, very good. Any discussion? Question is on Mrs. Fisher's motion. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trotta. All right, we're on to new business. We have a consent agenda. Mrs. Freeman?
Good evening, Mrs. Brightman, Dr. Wilcox, members of the Board of Education. I hope you can hear me this evening through the microphone. 6 items for your consideration this evening. The first item is to purchase a CNC milling machine for the Career and Technology Education Program at Williamsport High School. This milling machine will replace an existing machine which is currently not operational, and they need a CNC machine for their metals manufacturing program. This price is $36,249, and it is from a Howard County Public Schools contract. The order would be placed in Midwest Technology Products. Second on the agenda is the lease of a digital production press, a color primary unit. Proposals were solicited to select a vendor for this printing press, which will replace an existing press in the print center. A new digital press will replace the press that is 5 years old and has required quite a bit of service of late to maintain its operability. This existing lease ends June 30th. The Procurement Review Committee recommends that we go forward with a proposal by Canon Solutions America for a Canon Image Press C800 under a 5-year lease at an annual price of $56,412.41. This price does include all consumable supplies and maintenance to the unit. The lease period, as I said, was 60 months, 5 years, starting July 1st. The third item on the agenda is a lease of 113 multifunction unit/copiers. We solicited and received proposals in order to select a vendor for a lease for these 113 units to be installed in 47 school facilities throughout the school district. The specifications required that the leases be under a pooled volume of 36 million black and white impressions annually. We did have a pre-bid meeting. We had good attendance, and we did have robust competition under the bid. The provision of toner, staples, and replacement parts when needed, and all servicing to maintain the copiers was included in the proposals. In addition, pricing was requested for the removal and disposal of the existing 121 old OSE multifunction units. The evaluation team looked at the bids for a fair market value lease as well as a $1 buyout lease. And the $1 buyout lease is being recommended. The lowest bidder, Phillips Office Solution, is proposing to provide 113 Kyocera Task Alpha 8001i copiers at an annual cost of $265,278.43. In addition, it is recommended that the units be purchased, configured, and ready to install print management software, which will help us control the number of copies that we're using in the school system, as well as hopefully paper purchases. That adds $5,499 to the lease. So the annual rate for the lease, as recommended, is $270,777.43. The cost per copy compares very, very favorably to current and recent lease purchases. As a 60-month term, effective July 1 of 2015, and Phillips Office Solutions has a very solid relationship with Kyocera, and the recommended copier has been demoed and tested in this building just fairly recently, so we're very familiar with the equipment that would be provided to our schools under the lease. Item 4 is a health suite expansion at North Hagerstown High School. This is an interior renovation project. It will expand and improve the health suite to meet current standards for the students enrolled at the high school. An administrative office area adjacent to the main office will be converted into a new health suite that would include an office, an exam room, a treatment area, a resting area, and 2 restrooms and some storage. This work would be performed in the summer, and the lowest responsive and responsible bidders being recommended, Eagle Construction Company, at a total price of $89,960. Another bid with very good competition. Item 6 on the agenda is the utilization of a State of Maryland contract for our local telecommunications requirements. The local telecommunications requirements includes the local network lines and local telephone service and call usage from the telephone company to its schools and offices in this Hagerstown local access and transport area. Washington County Public Schools, we anticipate, will spend $275,000 annually for local telecommunications services. The Procurement Review Committee recommends that we continue to utilize the State of Maryland contract with Verizon Maryland for as long as that contract continues to provide good prices and we're satisfied with the services we've received from Verizon. Item 6 on the agenda is to provide and configure an IBM Blade server for the network. We did receive quotations. This order is being recommended to be placed to the Tamalpass Group of Frederick, Maryland, at a price tag of $33,735. This company has done work for the school system, has provided us equipment for our network in the past. Concludes my bids this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Requires a motion.
Madam President, excuse me. I move to approve the following bids proposals for the purchase of first a CNC milling machine for the CTE at Williamsport High School to Midwest Technology Products at $36,249. Lease a color digital production press for the print shop going to Canon Solutions America Incorporated at $282,062.05 for a 5-year term. lease 113 multifunction unit copiers for 47 schools to Philips Office Solutions at $1,353,887.15 for a 5-year term. Health Suite expansion at North Hagerstown High School to the Eagle Construction at $89,960. Local telecommunications services to Verizon Maryland, Inc. at State of Maryland contract rates, and provide and configure an IBM Blade server to Tamplis
That's how I would
Group,
pronounce
Inc. at $33,735.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. A second?
Second.
Dr. Hardings, thank you. Questions or comments? Staff is here to answer.
I'll just
Yes, Dr.
Just say it's
Hardings.
exciting to see the career and technology program at Tech High getting a CNC machine. That's a great opportunity for those kids, sort of the newest, I'm not sure how new it is, I imagine it's fairly new, sort of state-of-the-art type machining type equipment, which as someone who signs a lot of contracts with machinists, we need good machinists, and it's great to see that the focus of our career technology education at places even other than the technical high school are really emphasizing this sort of skills for our students. So I was glad to see that.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Questions? Question is on Mr. Ridenhour's motion. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to new business. Mr. Trotta, I guess there he is. First reading of proposed changes to policy JGB.
Thank you. Policy Committee consulted with staff with regard to policy JGB, which is entitled Portable Electronic Communication Devices in Schools. The Policy Committee conducted 4 separate work sessions on this policy, and it is offering the following recommendations at this time. First, that the policy be relettered as policy JICJ. This is what is recommended by the National School Boards Association. That the policy be retitled as follows: Use of personally owned electronic devices. The next recommendation is that the policy be placed in a new format in accordance with policy BG. And finally, that the board adopt the proposed changes to this policy, which encourages the use of personally owned electronic devices as a part of a student's normal academic program. This would be with the permission of a teacher or administrator. I next want to provide you with an overview of the changes to the policy. The first is under Article 1. The policy sets forth its purpose and makes it clear that students may use personally owned devices subject to certain requirements. Article 2 defines that term, personally owned electronic devices. Article 3 summarizes the educational benefits of allowing students to use such devices in a school setting. And also in Article 3, you'll note that it makes clear that the usage of such devices shall not disrupt the educational environment, violate the rights of others, or violate the board's acceptable use policy. And finally, Article 3 provides that a student is solely responsible for his or her device. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Motion?
Yes, Madam President. I move to approve the first reading of the proposed changes to policy JGB entitled Portable Electronic Communication Devices in Schools.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Mr. Ridenhour, thank you. Mrs. Fisher?
As Mr. Trotta said, we spent 4 sessions working on this particular policy. It wasn't something taken lightly. We had many discussions with technology department, based also on what we had learned earlier this year about the increased use of such devices in classes by many teachers. And also after studying the fact that many school districts are allowing personally owned devices in their schools. And we also looked at some of their policies as well in helping to put this policy together. So I recommend passage of this particular policy.
Very good, thank you. Questions? Ms. Harshman.
I'm just wondering if we have something in place for violations of this, because I know this has been an issue in many schools. So is there already a board policy or regulation for what can be used in schools, or is this the first incident? This policy, will this be the first one that has been set forth, or is there already some kind of punishment? Or
Mrs. Fisher?
If you look under Roman numeral 3, policy statement and procedures, and go all the way down to letter E, it's entitled disciplinary consequences. And there will also be administrative regulations written for this as well, which I would expect would also include some disciplinary considerations.
Are any of those in effect at this time? Do you know? Or
are any of those in effect?
Most of that's in blue. That's why I was wondering.
If a device was not properly used by a student in accordance with this policy, then they could be subject to disciplinary action. And that would be covered under E. The other recommendation of the policy committee, if you examine the last page, there's a number of other related policies that are referenced in this particular policy. And in particular, we have the acceptable use policy, and that sets forth a number of do's and don'ts as far as the use of electronic devices.
Okay, that may be the one that I had heard was not very well enforced, but this should wrap it up.
You know, we are not, I'm not getting any types of complaints or concerns that have come through my office with regard to the use of devices.
I know they're different at different schools, so that's what I was concerned about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments on the first read? Ms. Williams.
Letter C, no expectation of technology support. I'm just wondering why not a stronger statement? WCPS staff will not provide technology support for a student's personally owned electronic device.
Again, we talked about that in the meeting, and it was suggested that if a teacher, somebody was having problems with their device, if a teacher had the time, he or she might choose to take a moment or two to help somebody with that problem. We decided not to totally restrict them from doing it, but to make sure that students understood that it wasn't expected of the teacher or aide in the room to help them navigate a program or fix something wrong with whatever their device is.
Follow-up, Ms. Williams or Ms. Harshman?
Just one other concern, and I didn't see it in here, which I may be missing it, but the geofence, is this affecting this policy within the schools also? And do we have any reports on how that's working?
Well, certainly if somebody uses one of the social media tools like Twitter or something that's geolocated, we would see them. If a kid was tweeting, we would see it. right now. We get daily updates as from kids who are using it, but we're not finding kids using technology inappropriately right now, at least in the few that I read. So,
Thank you.
I think I would just say this. I think these two technologies will go hand in hand.
Yes.
I just have a question with regard to the student handbook that we put out. Does our acceptable use policy get published in that? I'm thinking that policy and this policy would be of particular interest to parents and students. Mrs. Fisher's comment that students would want to know that there is no expectation, and I don't know how many students would happen upon this policy unless it were in
I think it would find its way into student handbooks as well as into the AUP.
AOP. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Brightman?
Yes.
I think this is a policy that's thinking in the right direction. It's more enabling to allow students to use their devices rather than the old policy, which was very, it had the assumption that no student could use a device in school. And as I've talked to some of my colleagues from other counties, other states, one of the comments I kept hearing when I asked, do you have a policy that says students are allowed to use their devices? Some of them, the more progressive ones, said, no, do you have a policy saying that students could use pencils? Now, that's going a little overboard, I think, but I think it's already an expectation in most of our schools that students, once they reach a certain age, they have and they use devices. I know my children, as young as 6th grade, have had many occasions in school where the teachers assume that each of their students has a device with them, and has access to it. And that's evidenced by some teachers saying, I need you to go and download this app. And that'll be during instructional time, because the app is something they want to use as part of instruction. So I think updating the policy in this way not only helps us think towards what education looks like, but I think it also helps bring us into compliance with really what's happening in our classrooms anyway. I'm pleased to support it, and hope that this will give our students and our teachers one more tool to provide great instruction for our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Other questions, comments? All right, the question is on Mrs. Fisher's motion. All those in favor? Looks like 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Trotta. All right, consideration on, I believe, Mr. Rollins and Dr. Michael will be taking the lead on the presentation of the Academic Hub resolution. Welcome.
Good afternoon. President Brightman, members of the board, Dr. Wilcox. We're here on behalf of Dr. Wilcox this evening, seeking your approval. I laid down the wrong device here. Okay, seeking your approval for an academic resolution regarding the Academic Hub for downtown Hagerstown. Before you have a 4-page resolution that gives very specific direction to Dr. Wilcox and staff members of how to proceed possibly with this interest in pursuing an academic hub. We did receive an unsolicited proposal from Bowman Development Group for a building of approximately 51,600 square feet. The current estimated cost of the building is $15.5 million. If favorable bidding is acquired by the developer, there is an opportunity for Washington County to enjoy either low bids or an opportunity to accept additional alternates. The proposal also identifies, and the Board of Education would own that building at the end of the construction period. The proposal also suggests or provides an opportunity for a 20-year lease at $100,000 a year, and at the end of that time period, the Board of Education would own the property as well. As the board's aware, we've been looking for academic space to support the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, some other expansion of Barbara Ingram, and particularly other downtown boutique schools that also could be housed in this building, or the academic support could be from this building and the boutiques might be located in another area. The resolution specifically provides Dr. Wilcox the authority to seek permission from the state superintendent. We need her permission for alternative financing. We need her permission to pursue a building that's over $350,000, not involving state funding. It would also allow Dr. Wilcox to contact Dr. Lieber, who's the executive director of the Interagency Committee, and provide information to them relative to the project. Allows him to seek permission from the Board of County Commissioners for the project. Separate of the funding, it does require that we have their permission to construct the project. It also authorizes Dr. Wilcox and staff to pursue funding for the project, whether it be the proposal as presented or other proposals that I'll get to in just a minute that could be presented, in the amount of $4 million from the current board reserve fund. Ask the City of Hagerstown for $1.5 million in funding. Ask the County Commissioners for upfront funding of $4 million from their capital program or other funds that they would see appropriate, and also seek an opportunity to borrow up to $6 million from the County Commissioners that would be paid back by the Board of Education in the future to support if the project were indeed $15.5 million. Another part of the requirement of an unsolicited proposal is an opportunity for competition. So this resolution would also authorize Dr. Wilcox to seek other proposals. So we would prepare a document that would go out much like a bid. It would be an RFP, requesting other people to present proposals that they'd want to have considered. Dr. Wilcox and staff would review the Bowman proposal thoroughly, would review other proposals, if any are received, thoroughly, compare them in an equitable manner between each other, and then if the board chose to support the resolution, Dr. Wilcox was successful in all the pieces and parts of the resolution, bring back at some future meeting the successful proposal for your consideration to move forward. At this time, we'd be glad to entertain any questions or anything you might have.
Mr. Brett?
Yes.
I simply want to say to the board that I think this is an important moment for this board. It's an important moment because what we're saying is that we as a board can be both fiscally responsible and in tune with what the needs of our kids are. If you remember, this conversation began some time ago when we were talking about the need for a comprehensive high school. And I began to talk to some of you as board members about drawing down enrollments and better utilizing some of the facilities that we had, finding ways to get more kids into Washington County Technical High School, finding ways to reuse space like 701 North Frederick, finding ways to use space within this building perhaps. We began talking about that. We've been talking about where our young people might be able to extend their education through internships and externships. And perhaps most importantly, it wasn't lost on this board and members of our community that pushing down the road the construction of perhaps, or eliminating perhaps, the cost of an $80 to an $85 million high school seemed to be a worthy goal, seemed to be a smart way to approach the needs of our kids. And so we began over 3 years ago talking about how this project might come to light. I think we presented to you a very fiscally responsible and somewhat conservative approach to spending $15.5 million over the next few years for a building that will last us over 50 years if you look at the way we're required to construct facilities. Pushing off a huge debt load into the foreseeable future. So I would encourage the board to view this from a number of perspectives. First, doing the right thing by our young people, creating academic spaces that are worthy of them, that also reflect where education is going in the 21st century. Smaller learning centers focused on kids who have a passion and an interest for improving themselves personally. Being respectful of the fact that our business community is talking about the need to have kids who have internships and practical experiences within the related disciplines of the businesses of this county. And thirdly, I would encourage you to think about this as a way to say to taxpayers around this community, yes, we're spending $15.5 million now, but that is to offset the expense of probably $80 million or more in the foreseeable future. So again, I would encourage you to support this set of resolutions and give us the opportunity to proceed carefully, methodically, but also with some pace. And with that, we'll turn it to questions.
Thank you, Dr. Wilcox. This requires a motion.
Madam President, I move to approve the resolution regarding the academic hub.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. We are now open for discussion. Questions? Mr. Gessford.
Fellow board members, I will not be supporting something I do not have all the information on today. In my opinion, we have elementary schools and middle schools that need renovations and repair, and they keep being overlooked. We have teachers that don't have daily supplies to do their job, paper shortages, parents being asked to bring supplies, and we're shed teachers taking their personal monies to buy supplies. I know they don't do this because I know they do this because they love to teach, but why should they have to? I ask why we would have built a school without a cafeteria or enough classrooms to handle the next 20 years of growth is beyond comprehensive to me. Now we want more classrooms and a cafeteria. Safety issues are a concern. We have students that are walking across the street that need a policeman, a principal, city safety officers just to escort them across the street, class to class. We are now going to be adding a vice principal for 277 students that also walk students to and from classes on the street. The cost per student, I'm looking at numbers that was just given to me at $12,448, but yet at South High, those same students get $7,561 per student. I know there's variables, but the bottom line is we spent $4,887 as a difference. We do not have enough money set aside to move forward unless we borrow monies, putting the burden on the county government and the taxpayer. At this time, it might be a stretch since we already received 52% of the county budget. Now, before anyone prints that I'm not in support of Barbara Ingram School, that is not true. I acknowledge that we have a space problem, and I think Mrs. Fisher had a great idea to keep the performing arts downtown with like drama, dance, band, but move some of the other things out and put a cafeteria and classroom into something that we already have. I think it's a good idea to keep it next to the Maryland Theater so that we can partner with them and then revisit this in 2 to 3 years when the county enrollment and funds have increased. If we just can't separate the classes, maybe explore moving Barbara Ingram to Antietam Academy location and relocating the academy, Antietam Academy elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gessford. Ms. Fisher. I think I made a similar statement to what Mr. Gessford said as a last-ditch attempt that if we could not come up with the funds to increase the space at Barbara Ingram, maybe we would have to reduce the number of students there so that we could add the academic classes. I think also Mr. Gessford has mixed two different things together here. He's talking about the hazards of walking, and yes, there may be some hazards of crossing streets now to get to academic classes. However, the hub would eliminate the need to be out on the street doing that. Also, in the comparison between the cost of BISFA students to South High students, I find rather awkward. I would think that the best comparison would be between BISFA and Tech, because it offers a specialized program, whereas South High is a basic high school. But I do not know what the cost is of Tech High per student, but I do think that would be a more appropriate comparison. At this point, this is not a vote to tie us into any particular construction downtown. It's more, I see it as a kind of an exploratory step to see what's perhaps other ideas are out there, as well as being able to proceed with further information on this proposal. So I will be voting for it tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Harshman.
Well, I think soliciting proposals without funding is a waste of the people who would set up the proposals. We don't even know if we have funding for this. In fact, from what I've heard, we do not. I also was concerned when the idea was mentioned by Dr. Wilcox of smaller learning centers, and yet we go out and build elementary schools that hold 800 students. I'm thinking that for the elementary students, we should have kept our neighborhood schools and larger schools for with different opportunities for the older students. Also, as far as out on the street, they would still have to cross the street downtown in order for parking, because we do not have a place for parking, nor have we been guaranteed any place. I had a couple other concerns. The main thing is that without any kind of assurance of any monies from anyone, city or county, I think that we are looking at something that needs to be held back until we have that. So I will not be voting for this.
Thank you, Ms. Harshman. Mr. Ridenour.
Just a couple of things, and if I may respond to a couple of things that were said in regards to this. We never have guarantee of any construction money until we ask for it, until we start moving forward, whether it's state, county, any school that we build, any construction project that we recommend or ask for, we have to ask for the money. Secondly, comparing BISFA to South High or any of our high schools it's problematic, because if you do a per pupil cost analysis, it includes I believe the lease agreement. That is added into the per pupil cost, as well as the rented space. And I have heard over and over again from certain people that we made so many mistakes downtown, we didn't build it big enough, we didn't have a cafeteria. The cafeteria came about, and the idea for a cafeteria was Dr. Wilcox's. He wanted to see the students have a cafeteria. The enrollment at Barbara Ingram grew every year, has grown pretty much every year since we opened it. And that includes those years when we didn't have a cafeteria. And the fact that we didn't have a cafeteria did not mean that our kids were not being fed. It meant they didn't have a cafeteria per se. They got fed. They didn't complain. They still wanted to be there. And if we didn't have a cafeteria today, they would still want to be there. So that makes no sense to me. I've heard the issue of parking. We don't have parking downtown. We pay for parking downtown, so we do have parking. That's included in the per pupil cost. Are we going to include what we pay to plow our parking lots, to pave our parking lots, to fix potholes in our parking lots? That's not included in the per pupil cost at South Hagerstown. Are we going to amortize what we paid for South Hagerstown or any of our other schools and include that into their per pupil cost? No, we don't do that. The building's there. So it's not, there's no apples for apples here. We pay $45,000+ a year for our Marshall Street students and for our students at the Job Development Center. We pay $14,000 a year for our students at Funkstown. I mean, all of these. And what are we going to say to those kids? I'm sorry, but we're going to try to make everything equal. So that for every school gets $12,000 per student per year. How's that going to work? And my question is, how do we resolve the issues that we have downtown? These are issues we knew we were going to have. Over and over again, I've tried to say that to people. There is nothing that has happened at Barbara Ingram that we did not know about, that we did not say would happen. We knew that the enrollment at the University of Maryland was going to increase. We were confident it would, as were they. So our MOU was written in a way that when that happened, we would get some type of notice so that we could plan for it. We're planning for it. You know, everything that's being done here with this resolution is a continuation of what we started when we started the BISFA project years ago. It's nothing more than a continuation. The only difference is that we're looking forward instead of backward. We're looking at ways to not only deal with Barbara Ingram's issues and not only improve that program, but add programs that will benefit kids. It's what we do and what we should do. We don't pay cash for high schools or schools, period. We build them. We borrow money. The county borrows money. We borrow money. Barbara Ingram, we're paying for. This, in many ways, we will pay for all of it, for all intents and purposes. Because we will be borrowing the money again, a bond, and we'll be paying back the county or whoever the bonding agency is. So this is nothing different. It is an attempt to move forward and not continually look back and say, oh, you did things so poorly. You didn't plan for this. Well, we did plan for it. And this is the next step in it. So I give it my unqualified support. I'm proud to put my name to this. I'm proud to say that we are going to provide our kids with something more or something new and save millions and millions of dollars by not having to build a comprehensive high school in the next 5 to 10 years. Because I believe personally that within the next 10 years, we may never, if we get by that time frame, we may never need a comprehensive high school because the delivery of education is changing. And I think you're going to see less and less, particularly at the upper levels, of brick and mortar education. So I support it. I'm proud of what we've done, and I'm proud of our staff for putting this together. I think it is something that will benefit our students in Washington County in general. Thank you.
Oops. Anything else, Mr. Ridenour?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Yes, I acknowledge and I agree that the students of the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts are in need of corrections to their current learning environment. They need additional classroom space, they need a cafeteria, they need science labs, most of which the school has been without since its opening. My concern is with the first two whereas. I don't know that downtown Hagerstown is the place that I would put an academic hub. I believe that what we're looking at, what this proposal would do, would create additional space for the Barbara Ingram School and for the students there, but I don't know that it will allow for additional students to attend any new programs. I've not seen any plans that would tell me what those programs would be or what specialized courses or internships are feasible. I just don't know that downtown Hagerstown is a place for an academic hub. So that first whereas limits us to downtown Hagerstown. I have concerns about financing. I have a question, if I may ask that, Mrs. Brightman. And
absolutely, and I didn't know if you wanted clarification on the statement you just made about whether the resolution would limit any options to just downtown. I didn't know if you wanted clarification on that.
That's how I interpreted that first whereas. But
Probably be up to Dr. Wilcox. Our intent right now is we've looked at how we would address some of the mechanics of how the Barbara Ingram students move around. We were looking to address, reducing class exchange time, to deal with their cafeteria issue, avoid them maybe crossing the street depending upon the location. So I think our intent right now is for a downtown building, but I would defer to Dr. Wilcox if it's limited to that. But I think in what we're trying to address with Barbara Ingram, This building that's proposed also has, I don't want to quote a figure, maybe Rob knows off the top of his head, 8 or 10,000 of expansion square footage in the building purposefully to address any Barbara Ingram expansion of programs or other potentially boutique schools that we'd open. So it would avoid the current lease costs at the Grand Piano Building, the Bridge of Life, our investment at the University of Maryland, other boutiques that we might try to open in other storefronts could either be open there or possibly in this building.
But to clarify, the RFP would not be written specifically to exclude locations,
We would need that direction from
specify locations.
Dr. Wilcox, because that'd be one of our criteria that we would be gauging, using to gauge proposals. So, I mean, if the board's interested in opening it up broader than downtown, I guess we would just need to know that.
I was just trying to get clarification. Thank you. Continue, Ms. Williams.
I'm just reading in the first whereas says a new academic center located in the downtown Hagerstown Arts and Entertainment District. That to me is very specific and does not open things up to anything beyond downtown Hagerstown.
If I wasn't clear, I'll say again,
All right.
our current, what we're currently going to draft, or our draft proposal for soliciting other proposals would be in the immediate vicinity of Barbara Ingram.
Of the Barbara Ingram School.
But can that open up wider? That would be up to consideration. I guess Dr. Wilcox, I'll have to defer to him. But the intention right now is to address that area.
May I continue?
Continue,
Then my
yes.
questions with regard to number 4 and 5 on page 2, the seeking of funding. If you could explain the process, please, of how we're going to seek that funding from those two entities. I understand that the city of Hagerstown is having their budget work this afternoon, and I think the county has already completed theirs and plans to present it 5th of May. So what would that process be where
Well,
it says seek funding?
I think, again, that's the opportunity we're looking for permission for Dr. Wilcox and or for staff to go out and to seek that funding. I don't think it's a secret to the county commissioners or to the city of Hagerstown that we're interested in this project. These numbers have been shared with the county commissioners in open session, to my knowledge, and publicly off and on for the last 6 months. So seek funding might be seek it now, seek it next year, seek it 2 years, whenever that funding might be available. But to Mr. Ridner's point, we have to ask. We can't ask until we have the approval to seek the funding. I think the term is very purposeful.
And I think to be specific, when you look at item 3, to secure and dedicate $4 million of the board's fund balances, I think we've talked about that significantly, and we're going to continue that conversation. When you seek $4 million from the county commission, the amount of $4 million, we've been very clear that we're looking for some CIP dollars for them to either reassign them from a project that we have or somebody else has. But we wouldn't limit them. We're not capable of them. If they wanted to just do it out of their discretionary funds, they could do that as well. And then we have been, I think, very clear about saying that in order to close the funding gap, we would need an additional $6 million. We've had conversations with them about increasing their borrowing authority. You know, I read the papers too. I know that they're a bit reluctant to do that, but I think we can now, with the board's permission, we can make a pretty strong financial case as to why it might be in their best long-term interest to do this. But we can't ask unless the board gives us the approval through this resolution.
And Mrs. Williams, I just wanted to be sure that you're not confusing the operating budget that I believe the county commissioners are going to have the public hearing on the 5th, and a capital discussion of capital dollars. So
that's what we're looking at.
So
their
we're looking at capital dollars here. So, but go ahead.
Okay,
continue.
I just had one more question, and that deals with the $6 million that we're planning to, or we would be asking the commissioners to loan us, or make it possible for us to pay. The funds that we would be using would come from our operating budget, is that correct?
That's correct.
So in addition to the $654,000 that we're paying currently, how much would we be paying additionally?
Well,
can you give me a total, that $654,000 plus whatever that is, an estimate?
Until the county goes to the bond market and actually determines a rate for repayment for us, it's hard to say. But you know, my sense is we're in the $400,000 to $500,000 annual repayment cycle. I'd refer to others who are smarter about this kind of stuff, but you know, that's kind of what we're thinking, is $400,000+, and that's $6 million at 3% over 20 years. Obviously, you can stretch terms and do things like that, but again, we don't have the answers to those questions until we actually go out and talk to the county commissioners. I've had some preliminary conversations with Mr. Murray, but he certainly couldn't commit, just like I couldn't commit to you for what that might look like. We've never talked about the specific ask, but.
Additional questions, Mrs. Williams?
Just one more.
Sure.
This
That's-
$80 million high school, those funds would not come out of our operating budget. Those would come out of capital improvement funds, correct?
That would have to be a CIP project
And
funded
our-
between state and local.
And our portion of that 80 million would be approximately
Zero.
zero?
We would not. That would be a state and county obligation fully.
Okay, locally.
But
Then let's talk locally, not
County
not
obligation.
us, but the county's obligation would
Right,
be.
the county's obligation on $85 million would far exceed $15.5 million. So if the county paid 100% of this project and it'd help us avoid long-term with the high school, it would be in the county's interest when you look at it in those types of terms. I mean, right now, we currently enjoy a 71.29% participation on any project of eligible costs with the state. So it'd be 29% of 85 million, but in the 85 million would probably be 3.5 million of architect fees, which all would be local money,
Have to buy
other
the
eligible
land.
costs, furniture, equipment, those types of things. So I don't want to put a figure to it either at this point, but it would well exceed $15.5 million from the county local level.
Thank you.
You know, Rob's saying $30 to $40 million, as much as that.
Absolutely.
And I think that might be one selling feature with the county commissioners. They do have money in the out years in their CIP for high school expansion, you know, kind of undetermined what that is. So I think that would be part of our pitch would be, this is the high school expansion. This will help us in many ways as we continue. We'll increase the enrollment at the hub, at boutiques, at Barbara Ingram if we had this facility. The facility is about twice the size of Barbara Ingram. If the current proposal would be the successful proposal, 51,600 square feet, you know, substantially bigger. I think Barbara Ingram is about 27.5.
Finished.
Yeah.
More
Can
questions?
we- Can we come back then? Or
Absolutely.
back around?
We'll
Okay.
come back around.
Perfect.
and-
Perfect.
Mr. Ridenour.
Just to respond, Mrs. Williams, I think I'm almost certain you're aware that we have a buyout clause in our lease with BISFA right now, that at the end of 10 years, and this was a funding model that we hope to improve, obviously, this time around. But we have a buyout clause at the end of 10 years. We can pay off the remainder of our indebtedness, which would mean that lease amount would go out of our operating budget. And I'm certain we would try to work out a similar situation with financing with this particular project. And remember, too, that each year, you know, we typically, depending on turnover credit, depending on energy cost and other things that allow us to put money into our fund balance, we are in a position at the end of a year to say, okay, we have $1 million, and if we set up our financing in such a way that we can pay down, that is a way that each time you pay something down, obviously, if you put a little extra on your principal, the amount of indebtedness goes down and your interest payment goes down also. So there are a variety of different ways that we're not going to have, or we may not have as much money coming out of our operating budget as it may appear initially. You know, over a course of time, that will change, obviously. So I just wanted to make that clear that, you know, and see, what is it, 4 years away, Rob, or 3 years away we can pay it off? 4?
2008, I believe, 9.
So that would mean 3 years.
Yeah.
In 3 years, we can pay it off if we make a decision that, okay, we'd like to take X number of $1 million from the fund balance and pay this off and take that off our books.
Hardings?
Yes, thank you. Many things I'd like to say, but I'll keep it as brief as I can. I think the point is right that you can't look at a $12,000 per pupil cost at the Barbara Ingram School and compare that to another facility where the capital costs aren't included. If I'm a business owner and I own the Acme Widget Company, and you ask me how much it costs to build a widget, if I don't include the cost of my facilities or the machine tools I use to make the widget, then I'm not really giving you the cost of what it takes to make a widget. I think the same thing, I mean, somebody built South Hagerstown High School. In fact, it was renovated not too long ago. I imagine the county's still paying the debt on the renovation, or somebody is. The state probably is.
Could be, yes.
So all of those are costs that if you're going to do a fair, apples-to-apples comparison, you have to connect. I was just going to ask the superintendent if, what about a school like Winter Street or Conicajig, or do we have a sense of what the per pupil costs are in schools like that? Again, not including capital.
Not including capital, probably $10,000 or so per kid. They're small schools with staff that are fairly senior.
Because if I take,
I would say 10,000.
if I take the $12,400 per student at Barbara Ingram, and then I take the cost of the lease, which is $36,000 per year, divide it by the number of kids, which is 277, that comes out to $2,300 of that $12,500 is the cost of the lease. Now, would it be more or less if I did the same analysis based on the debt and what it cost to build South Hagerstown High School? I don't know, but if I subtract that out, I get less than $10,000 per student. So these comparisons are tricky. I mean, I'm sure it costs more to educate a kid at Marshall Street than it does at probably any school in the county. I happen to think spending the money on those kids is the right thing to do. A couple of other comments. I wasn't on the board when they made the decision to build the Barbara Ingram School. So I don't know what went into the decisions at the time. I can tell you I can go to any school in the county and find things that I wish were different. There's not a middle school I walk into that I don't think, why did they build these open classroom schools? But that's the schools we got. And we either got to change it, we got to deal with the school system we have, not the school system that we wish somebody had built a long time ago. So to me, we do need a solution for these students. I think also that there is an opportunity to provide more experiences like these students are having and clearly embracing for other students who want to pursue other academic pursuits. A couple of other things. You end up in a chicken and the egg problem here, right? Because you can go to the commissioners and ask for money, but they want to see the project first. Well, show me the project, then I'll tell you if you have the money. But then on the other hand, how do you know if you can do the project if you don't know you have the money? And I think we have tried over the last 2 years to be as clear and transparent as we could possibly be regarding this project. We've presented in open session here. We've presented in open session with both the commissioners and with the Hagerstown mayor and council, all using exactly the figures that the superintendent mentioned earlier and that are in this resolution. So I think we've been very clear about what we're after. At every single one of those occasions, I think I asked the commissioners and the mayor and council, if you think this is a bad project and you want to slam the brakes on it, tell us now. So far, we haven't heard that. Now, we may hear it soon. We may hear it from this board tonight. I don't know. But I think we've been very clear and transparent with the public, with our colleagues who are also elected officials about what our intentions are. I'm excited when I go to the technical high school or when I go to Barbara Ingram and I see kids who spend part of their day learning about things that they love and another part of their day doing their academic classes. And I would hope that we can find ways, whether it's this project or not, that we can give that experience to more kids in high school, because I think that's what's going to prepare them to walk out of our schools and be prepared for the world of work and innovation and creativity that I think is going to lead this community in the future. So That's all I have. I support the project and look forward to hopefully seeing it move ahead. Thank you, Mrs. Brayman.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Other questions, comments, Mrs. Fisher?
Two quick things. I worry about kids, the students from BISFA crossing the street downtown, but I sat here and thought about it, and there are kids from every school crossing busy streets, and perhaps the ones from BISFA are safer because they're in a group. It's not one little tiny kid trying to run across the street where somebody might not see him or her. The other thing is, and I think I'm correct on this, despite all the issues that BISFA students face, whether it's cafeteria, crossing streets, going to another building to take their classes, I believe every year that school has come out #1 academically in our county.
In the county?
And I attribute that to the fact that they're doing something they like, they're doing something they believe is going to shape their future, and it spills over into their academics. I don't want to take that away from them. I want to enhance it.
Thank you. Other questions? Mrs. Harshman?
I just have a comment. I don't think anyone here wants to take anything away from the kids. I think we want what's best for the kids and what will, in the final analysis, serve them best. And to continue to make projects that need tweaking in a year or 2 or 3 years, just like no cafeteria and no classrooms, to me is foolish. So I do believe that we have a very large problem as far as the money is concerned, because I do not feel that we are going to be supported by the county commissioners, nor do I think the city is going to step up, since I believe they were near bankrupt. But that's where I'm coming from. So until we can come up with something, and at one point in time, Jackie did, or Mrs. Fisher did mention about moving some people out, some groups out from down there. And personally, I think that's an excellent idea, to move them to another location and to use the building that's already there to put a cafeteria and classrooms in, and find a new location for programs down there that really don't have to be in the center of Hagerstown, such as creative writing, pottery making, and so on. They could be shown off in that particular area, but they don't have to be done in that particular area. So I think we are kind of looking at a pie in the sky, and I don't think that we will get funding for it. So I will not be voting for it.
Thank you, Ms. Harshman. Ms. Williams, you said you wanted to have a second go-around?
Yeah, I did ask about that. Thank you. We're back to me. I think I've had all my questions answered. Again, I do feel that something needs to be done to correct the situation at the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts. An academic hub is a wonderful thing, but I don't know that downtown Hagerstown is a place that could support such an academic hub as I'm envisioning, that would support many new boutique programs. You know, if that idea of an academic hub is just a way to sell what needs to be done to correct BISFA, I can't buy that. So that's my position.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Can I ask one question?
That's fine.
What would the capacity of the building as envisioned so far by the unsolicited proposal include? How many students?
Well, Barbara Ingram's rated at about 150 students, so I'd just guess off the top of my head approximately 300 students.
So 350 students in the, did you say 300 or 350?
300 in the hub.
300 in the hub.
150 in Barbara Ingram, so capacity about 450.
So it'd be twice the capacity of what's needed for the students at Barbara Ingram.
And remember, we have 277 kids currently at Barbara Ingram.
Okay, thank you.
I think, one of the things, and the phrase was used a moment ago about the chicken and the egg, and I want to share with Mrs. Williams that at least from the administration standpoint, and I certainly know from the side of the unsolicited proposal, none of us have thought about this as a way to simply correct what some have now identified as shortfalls of Barbara Ingram. I tend to agree with Mr. Ridenour because I was here, and one of the first buildings I visited was Barbara Ingram, and I think my comment to Wayne as the president at that time is, this feels too loose in here with the kids eating in the floor, but they were all happy. Kids were excited. You walked over them, and I just said, Wayne, I've got to try to address that. So that wasn't something that the Barbara Ingram kids or the faculty said. That was a new superintendent who said, I'm concerned about this. And so we negotiated the lease across the street. But I want to come back to the point that, we've now created the Public Service Academy at 701 North Frederick, and we have, 35, 40 kids that are going over there every other day. They're taking their academic classes at Washington County Technical High School, and then they're coming over and taking their practical classes in their disciplines on the opposite days. We expect to add a third leg to that stool shortly, which I believe is going to be focused on Homeland Security, some aspect of that, a little bit different than what's at at South High, but still kind of related in that security-related disciplines. What we hope would happen is some of those kids would start taking their classes in the academic hub. We've also talked, and you may remember back when we were in 820 Commonwealth, we had a meeting in the auditorium, and we talked about moving some of our computer classes, whether it be graphic design or digital animation studios, down to the academic hub. And why did we talk about it? If you remember, we talked about the emergence of organizations like High Rock downtown, some of the other tech companies that are now downtown. We thought we could give kids internships down there. Remember, at one time, we also talked about providing a venue for some of our culinary arts students to come down and have internships in some of the restaurants downtown. At one time, we even talked about moving cosmetology downtown and putting a storefront in where we could then help to serve some of the towers. I think if you go back and read some of your Herald Mail articles, you'll see that we talked about that. Now, I will tell you that I've subsequently learned that moving cosmetology was not the right thing to propose at the time because of the high cost of moving all of the sinks and all of the plumbing and creating a storefront and then getting in competition with one of our partners right downtown who also has a pretty good business model going, by the way, downtown, so we wouldn't want to be in direct competition with them. Actually, I'd welcome it, but I don't think they would. So we do have some ideas, but it's, again, that chicken and the egg. I mean, I can't really go out and start building programs and placing them downtown without the classroom space. But I also am now kind of caught with, I don't need the classroom space until I have the programs. Our commitment is to move towards boutique schools because we think it's the right thing to do for kids. I think some of the corollary benefits of the deferred cost to our taxpayers, if you look at down the road, I think that's a powerful piece. And I hope it won't be lost on the county commissioners. I think any good business would take a look at what their debt service was. They would look at the interest rate associated with that, and if there were opportunities to negotiate that down, they would consider doing that. I think those are things that we're doing to show that we're a progressive and financial steward of resources. I'm going to say, one of the things that has amazed me a little bit about my tenure in Maryland is how people just all of a sudden assume that debt is bad. Debt is not necessarily a bad thing if it advances a great purpose. And I think this is a great purpose. I can't identify something that is an incredibly worthy project that is paid for from dollar one, or actually even doesn't require a modification or a tweak once it gets built, because you learn things during the construction phase, you learn things during the usage. I mean, I'm reminded of the fact that when the University of Maryland system and other institutions build new campuses, they don't put the sidewalks in at first. Why not? Because they want to see the paths that the kids will take. That's a tweak. Would somebody say we shouldn't build a new campus because we don't know where the sidewalks are going to go? I don't think so. So I'm hopeful that you'll give us the authority to move forward with some of the questions. We will not be able to come back to you and say, we've got a completed project. We have to come back to you and say, pay for this phase. What about this funding? You will have to authorize every step of the way like we would in any other construction project. But we can't even begin to have the conversation if we can't get this resolution moved forward. So again, I would encourage you, and then one last thing I thought of, you know, I hear some of you talking about the safety of the downtown. First of all, I think downtown Hagerstown is a safe place. My wife and I spend time down there. But I know some of you say, well, your personal experience doesn't matter to me. But I would say this. My most recent employer was in New York City. And I will tell you that public school kids in New York City not only ride the subway every day, but they walk the streets of New York City. And I'm pretty sure if those kids can navigate the streets of New York City, in Manhattan and Soho and places like that, our kids can navigate the streets of Hagerstown. I believe they can. And I also will say to you, not only is it safe, I think it creates really a cool and a hip vibe for our kids, that they have an urban campus that includes the library, includes the University System of Maryland for inspiration. It includes the Barbara Ingram Center itself, which is a beautiful building and great architecture, which people thought highly of when they built. But the other diamond in all of this is the Maryland Theater that is right next door. When the question was asked about, you know, are we only limited in downtown, I don't necessarily know that we are, but certainly the resolution is trying to push us there. And why is that? Because the Maryland Theater is there. And our school is named the Barbara Ingram School for the Visual and Performing Arts. Why would we not want to be there for those kids? Why would we not want to take advantage of that great venue? So I would encourage a positive vote, but at the same time, I'm respectful of all of you and the constituencies that you represent. But I would hope that my board, our board in Washington County, would think about what's best for our kids and not necessarily try to make a vote that protects another elected body. Let them protect themselves. If they want to say no, they'll say no. But I don't think we should say no for them. I think we should give them the opportunity. And I honestly believe forward-thinking commissioners like we have, when they're presented with a financial case that we're going to present to them, they're going to have a hard time saying no. They may, but I think they'll have a hard time. So that's as hard a sell as I can do tonight. Thank you.
I'm impressed. Thank you, Dr. Wilcox. Heartfelt. I'd like to take a moment, if I can. I try to allow all my colleagues to have their time. Mrs. Hirschman, the only comment I will say is I would be remiss if I didn't take exception to the comment that Hagerstown is almost bankrupt. I think the mayor and council might disagree with that, and so I would certainly not want that to go on the record. And in fact, there's been several articles recently and a lot of interest and energy in Hagerstown, and I just don't want to let that go out there. I have a problem with that statement. What I've heard here tonight is very similar to the discussion we had with the tech plan not so long ago. There is, in my mind, a real tension on this board and in this community between traditional educational instruction and traditional educational facilities. I think the trend is going to more innovative instruction and more innovative facilities. Everything I hear, read, meetings throughout, I was in Nashville at a national convention of boards of education from all over the country, and the top topic in the entire 3 or 4 days was about innovative facilities, innovative instruction, virtual devices in classrooms, less brick and mortar. The energy was pretty impressive. My concern as a community and as a board that we are not willing to take a calculated risk to help the students in our community have the opportunities that other students have throughout Maryland and throughout the country. I will be supporting this resolution, knowing full well that there are still many other steps going forward. There will be the RFP, there will be design documents, there will be many opportunities for this board to have another bite at this discussion. I appreciate the discomfort that many of my colleagues are going through, and I wish we could all look forward 10 or 20 years from now and know exactly what the right answer could have been or should have been. I would like to take that leap of faith and really try to put our county on the road to being innovative. And if you look at our mission statement, which is our vision statement, which is all over, it's about inspiration, it's about curiosity, it's about creativity, it's about moving forward. So I will be supporting the resolution. And I'm sorry that you've sort of been sitting there listening to all of us. Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Rollins, Dr. Michael? Okay, I guess one other, just do you have a sense of a timeline? And I know we don't, but what we do know at this point is it's a 28, 30-day request for alternative proposals.
The minimum required by the state for after you receive an unsolicited proposal, if you are going to, consider that, we need to put out for competitive proposals. And the minimum amount of time for that's 28 days from the time we, put the request on the street.
To receive it back in, and then a series of time we have a committee that would open those up and go through all of that and
our draft,
then make recommendations to us.
We have draft criteria that we'd get down through and evaluate various proposals, much like we do an architect's proposal when they submit things, and would work with Dr. Wilcox and submit a recommendation to the board if we made it to that point.
Mrs. Harshman.
I just have one clarification. My comment was based on the day that we spent with the Hagerstown City Council, when they were asking us to be their neighbor, saying that they did not have funds for us for several things that we asked for. So at that point in time, the impression was given that they were not able to fund us or help us with funding. So I would prefer to acknowledge their look at how the benefits of Hagerstown are coming along as opposed to yours.
Thank you for that clarification. We have a motion before the board, Mr. Ridenour's motion. All those in favor, please signify. Appears to be 4. All those opposed? Appears to be 3. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Dr. Wilcox, you're back on again. Superintendent's report.
Out of the fire?
I started to say another very non-controversial topic.
Thank you, and I'm going to let...
At least we're not voting on this one.
No,
not tonight.
As all of you know, we have been working now for some time on taking a look at how to optimize our facilities. Based on the fact that we are opening a new elementary school, Jonathan Hager Elementary. So we had to find a way to get students into Jonathan Hager and then take a look at the rest of the system to make sure that, in fact, we had best used our facilities. We worked in a very public process using the Facilities Committee, commonly known as FIAC. They have spent considerable time building a series of recommendations for your consideration, and we've presented them to you. You then asked me to go back and take a look at those recommendations and come back with my superintendent's recommendations to you, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So I want to say to you that I have very carefully reviewed the documents provided by FIAC, entitled the Recommendations for Jonathan Hager Elementary Attendance Zone and Additional Attendance Zone Realignments Report. I have reviewed each of the required factors that are laid out in Board Policy JCA and followed the charge that was provided by the board. So this evening I want to say to you and to the community that I fully support FEAC's recommendations number 1 through 20. These recommendations logically reassign the existing attendance zones of closing Winter Street and Conococheague Elementary Schools. They develop a new Jonathan Hager Elementary attendance zone, and they create contiguous attendance zone boundaries between Western Heights and Northern Middle School. They identify Funkstown Elementary School as a regional pre-kindergarten center and establish Emma K. Daub Elementary as a kindergarten to grade 5 school, and then they balance enrollment projections at 16 additional elementary schools. I also want to say to you that I support FEAC's recommendation number 21, which establishes 2 separate pre-kindergarten to grade 5 schools by dividing the new combined attendance zones created by recommendations 9, 16, 19, and 20 into separate attendance zones for Eastern Elementary School and Ruth Ann Monroe Primary. This recommendation, however, is standalone and subject to the approval of the board. So we could move with 1 through 20 and not affect 1 through 21, but I do support number 21, which, as I said, creates new K through 5 attendance zones for Eastern Elementary and Ruth Ann Monroe Primary. I also took a long look at a number of other changes. And without going into great detail about those changes, I will tell you that I am proposing one new recommendation based on our conversation with the board, and that is recommendation number 22. In your packet, it is figure 1, that will reassign approximately 49 kindergarten to grade 5 students from Pangbourne Elementary to Potomac Heights Elementary. This area is currently located in the Cortland Park apartment complex, and it includes 11 buildings in the Cortland apartment complex. I won't go through the specific numbers, but if need be, the team will go through them with you. This change will increase Potomac Heights' projected enrollment in 2018 and make better use of that facility. With that, I'm going to hand this off to Chad, and he will, along with Mr. Wright, spend some time talking about specific recommendations. Mr. Criswell?
Thank you. As Dr. Wilcox indicated, recommendation 22 does realign approximately 49 K through 5 students from Pangbourne Elementary to Potomac Heights Elementary. Again, as he indicated, it was 11 apartment buildings in the Cortland Park development and 1 address point. The map that was included in the report references the area. It is the northwestern most portion of the current Pangbourne Elementary attendance zone and would now be incorporated into Potomac Heights Elementary based on the report. It takes the FEAC report and puts Pangbourne Elementary from 91% based on recommendations 1 through 21 up to or down to 84%, and it increases the enrollment at Potomac Heights Elementary up to 96%. I believe it's from 78% up to 96%. With that, I'll hand over the next steps of this process to Richard, and then if we come back with any questions, I'll be hopefully prepared to answer.
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Wilcox. I just am up here with Chad this evening to talk about the next steps beyond this evening in terms of communicating the redistricting information to the affected families, in addition to addressing how families might be able to submit comments and questions related to the board public hearing, which is set for May 4th. Up on the PowerPoint now, you'll see some of the things that are already in place and some things that actually happened this evening while we were all here in the board meeting. Families who are affected or think they may be affected by redistricting can view our website. It's very clearly marked on the home page in 2 locations where they can access the documents to see FEAC's report that came to the board a few weeks ago, in addition to Dr. Wilcox's recommendations that are listed side by side there. We also post this information on our Facebook page. The electronic document, if you're accessing it, we have the links live there. If you're just on Facebook, you can simply search Washington County Public Schools. And if you haven't liked our page, you can do that, and you'll get this information automatically in your feed. In addition, the schools who are impacted by the realignment proposal, as of tomorrow morning, will all have received the full printed packets, the maps that the Board of Education received, all the documentation will be there for families to come in and actually go through. They can get assistance from a principal or another staff member for having trouble viewing the documents, and also our staff and Mr. Criswell are also available to answer questions to anybody who has them. Additionally, you can contact the Public Information Office just for general questions. Our phone number is listed on the PowerPoint, 766-2809, or you can email me directly. I can be found on the website very easily by just searching my name. Also this evening, I'm sorry, back to the schools. We're teamed up with the schools for this round of redistricting, something we did not do last time because we took the reins on all the communications. Several of the schools have already written back to me today, and they have taken it upon themselves with our support in the Public Information Office to include information about the realignment in their newsletters. Some of them are sending direct letters home. Some of them have their own Twitter feeds and Facebook pages, My Big Campus, and other ways that they communicate with families. And while we did not dictate exactly how they would do that, they're giving that information back to us, and we're supporting them, and we'll be tracking all that so that we can clearly identify how families in each school, affected school, receive communication both from our office and also from the schools. There's some great work being done by our principals as of this morning, and some information went home to families this evening already. While we were sitting in the meeting tonight, a Connect 5 call, which is our new alert, it's the system that replaced Alert Now. Connect 5 sent a phone call to families and an email and a text message letting them know about the information that was available, that they were potentially impacted, that they should look into the documentation again, referring them back to our office, to Mr. Criswell, or to the schools for additional information. On the final page of the PowerPoint this evening, I want to talk specifically about how people can offer comments about the redistricting proposals. There are many ways, but three that we've identified here. One of them is to attend the public hearing on May 4th in this building at 6:30 p.m. Details are on the website, exactly how to sign up to speak. You actually can just show up and sign up for that evening, very similar to the public comment portion of the board meeting. You may also email me, as I had mentioned earlier, and I will ensure that all the board members receive the comments as we go forward beyond the public hearing. You may also mail written comments to this building to our attention. Again, all that information is included in the PowerPoint. Certainly, citizens, the public in general, may email the board directly. I would ask that if you could all keep me posted on that so I can keep a collective document of all of those questions and comments that come in. That would be very helpful. And I will take questions if there are any.
Okay, informational item this evening. We have the new recommendation from the superintendent. The rest remain pretty much the same, but staff is ready to take any questions you may have. Any questions? One more time around. No questions, comments? All right, any final, again, we know the next step. We're going on to the public hearing on May 4th at 6:30 here in this auditorium. What we're going to do is our vote won't be made until June 2nd, so it's almost a full month between the public hearing and the vote, which will, I think, allow sufficient time to try to get as much feedback from everyone and everyone to have an opportunity to give us comments and concerns and for staff to address all of those. And again, I will keep repeating what Mr. Wright has shared with us at any interim meetings, and we'll do everything we can to be sure that the parents are well aware of these changes and these recommendations. So, yes, Ms. Harshman.
I just have a request again. On the maps, if you could please indicate what schools are adjoining any of the redistricting areas so that we can then look on the chart to see how many students are in there. So in other words, if this is Potomac Heights, then what is this? So if we can get the names of each of those areas, that would really be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Williams.
Yes, I had a question for Mr. Wright with regard to sharing information. And while I wasn't involved in the last redistricting, I understand that one of the concerns parents had that they didn't receive notification. And I see the way that you've indicated that you're going to do that. I don't see U.S. mail or things being sent home with kids in backpacks. Any thought as to how we can ensure that each and every parent that's going to be affected by this receives notification?
One of the items that I've talked with the principals today about is using whatever resource works best for their school environment, whether it is a mailed letter or it's a letter sent home in the backpacks or in the folders with students. At the elementary level, that works very well, and many, and if not all, the principals have indicated that they plan to do that. For the middle schools, it is a little more challenging because those letters don't always make it home. Right. It's a very small number of students that are impacted, so we actually began talking earlier today with Mr. Rollins and Mr. Criswell about maybe a little more targeted effort for the middle schools because it is such a small number of families, to the point where we almost could reach out individually to those families to make sure that they're aware of it. And I would note, in the last round of redistricting, not only did we send U.S. mail home to the affected families, we actually sent U.S. mail to every resident in Washington County, because we wanted to ensure that everybody saw the information, especially landlords and people who might be having folks move into their properties, so they were aware of it as well. And I especially know full well that not everybody always sees everything that we send for a variety of reasons, but it's not for lack of effort, that's for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Any further questions, comments? All right, thank you very much. Dr. Wilcox, any updates?
I don't have any.
Very
I
good.
think I've talked it out.
All right, personnel action. Mrs. Francisco.
Wilcox, members of the board, as discussed earlier in closed session, there are several personnel actions for your review and approval this evening.
Thank you. A motion on personnel action?
Madam President, go ahead.
Madam President, I move for the approval of personnel actions recommended by staff.
Dr. Harding, second.
Second.
Mr. Ridenour. All those in favor of personnel actions? 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to reports to the board. We'll start with curriculum and instruction.
Curriculum and instruction will meet at 12 noon on April 28th in the board conference room. The agenda will be posted on the website and the public is invited.
Okay, very good. Facilities, Ms. Williams?
Yes, Facilities Committee will be meeting on Tuesday, April 28th at noon, upstairs, 3rd floor in Dr. Michael's conference room.
Okay, very good. Mr. Guestford, Finance.
Yes, the Finance Committee will be meeting on April the 28th at 10:45.
Okay, very good. Mrs. Fisher, Policy Review and Development.
Policy Committee met twice since we've had a business meeting. On April 8th, we worked on the family medical leave policy that we have presented today, as well as the portable electronic communication devices and a number of policies from Section I dealing with ceremonies and devices also, and they will be coming forward at our next meeting. Today, we met this morning and reviewed and edited IND, which has been relabeled IMP or IMB, and is now titled Religion in Schools and the First Amendment. We also revised INDB, relabeled IMDA, and renamed Pledge to the Flag and Silent Meditation. INDA, INDC were recommended for rescission. These will be presented on May the 5th at our business meeting for first read. And we also discussed 4 IGC policies dealing with various school trips. These will be combined into one policy, probably eventually with regulations for consideration on our next meeting, or for our meeting on May 19th. I'd like to, if I may, at this time, take a moment to ask my colleagues to be sure and read the policies that are a part of each business meeting agenda, and to voice any concerns, changes, corrections during our discussion of policies on first read, if you can. That way the committee has time to review and refine any of these changes that are needed before we get to second read, and hopefully once something is presented at second read, it will pass without additional changes that need to be made, and it will make the policy committee's work move much faster, and we're still facing a lot of policies that need to be reviewed to complete that book. I also have a report on the ad hoc committee on communications. We met on April 15th. Continued renewing our operating procedures and norms. We're in the process now of looking at some MABE documents and to see how they impact our communications policy, or not policies, but procedures. We also found a few of our own policies that deal with communication that we've been taking a look at. And our next meeting is April 28th at 10 a.m.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes, the HR committee will meet next Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the HR conference room, and the agenda will be posted on board docs.
Thank you. Any MABE reports? Ms. Harshman, Ms. Williams?
We met with the conference committee and set up the note cards from one of the counties that will be given as gifts to the speakers. And we went over some of the speakers who will be at the conference, and it seems as though it's going to be a very, very interesting conference, and I hope that everyone will be able to attend.
Good. Thank you. Mrs. Williams, I don't think resolutions has met, have they?
Not until July.
Okay, you've got a while then. And May Board of Directors, which I'll be attending, meets tomorrow. And then Monday the 27th is the recap of the legislative session at the May Legislative Committee. So, and of course, Mrs. Williams, you're welcome to attend as always. So, yes.
Just thought of something with regard to resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
In our mailbox this afternoon is a directory, and at the back of that directory are the resolutions that will be
Yes.
looked at. So if you would, in your spare time, read through those, and any suggestions that you may have for corrections, revisions to those resolutions, to pass that information on to me between now and the meeting in July, because that's what we do at that meeting, is to revise those resolutions. So that's where you'll find them, in the back of that MABE directory.
And the resolutions, for those that are interested or not, but really are the enabling documents for the legislative platform for really everything that MABE does instructionally. So it's a very important process, and I hope everyone will take some time to look at those. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Trotta, would you like to come up and help the legislative response team with a end of session summary?
Don't forget that we do have Mrs. Cade coming, so you don't have to summarize the entire session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm really pleased to report to the board that 2 of its primary initiatives did result in the pass of legislation during the session. The first of which was Senate Bill 71, House Bill 191, the reappointment of the superintendent. That law will take effect on July the 1st. And they really had a very interesting amendment that was added to that particular bill. It requires the Maryland State Superintendent of Schools to conduct a study and then to submit a report to the governor on the ways to improve the recruitment and retention of county superintendents. The second bill that we worked very hard on, and were a number of people that were involved in this, is the Alternative Teacher Certification Bill. This was Senate Bill 635. This bill also passed, and the content changed a bit as the session proceeded. But this law requires the State Board of Education, the Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board, and 2 local boards of education to consider and, if appropriate, develop an alternative teacher certification program for areas of the state experiencing a critical teacher shortage. So we're pleased to report the results of the session. And as Dr. Wilcox has indicated, Mrs. Kay will be here at our next public business meeting to provide a more in-depth report on many of the other bills that passed and some of the interesting legislation that did not make it through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Any comments from the rest of the team?
I have one, not
Yes.
about legislation, though.
Oh,
So I'll wait.
yes, please. Dr. Hardings? No comments? Okay, good. I did want to just add to that is that on April 8th, Congressman Delaney's office called and asked if they could have a legislative briefing. They had a 30-minute window between meetings with several groups in the county. And Dr. Hardings, Dr. Pugh, and myself met with Congressman Delaney. Dr. Pugh spoke about, and in fact, she had just come from North High and some of the park testing, and she was able to give some good feedback on the some of the frontline testing issues that she had, and shared that with the congressman. We also, Dr. Hardings spoke a little bit about technology. Congressman Delaney was interested in how that tied back to testing and whether we were ready and had the infrastructure. So again, a short meeting. We had sent our legislative binders that everyone received on the board to Senator Mikulski, Senator Cardin, and Congressman Delaney early in the legislative session. So this was a time to debrief with them. One other thing I might say from a legislative perspective is the Agenda Committee is working to come up with a date that we can debrief the legislative session with our partners, the county commissioners, and the delegations. And delegation, we will let everyone know as we land on a date on that one. Any other questions anyone may have on the legislative session? Okay, thank you, Mr. Trotta. Just a brief bit of housekeeping under miscellaneous business. Per our school board operating process, when a board member requests information or report that takes more than 10 minutes of staff time to be prepared, the board members should seek consensus for the request from the rest of the board. So I know that a board member had sought a significant amount of information over the last couple days. I think he has received a fair percentage of that request, but I think to complete that request would take at least 2 more hours. I guess my question to the member is whether he feels he has sufficient information or if he would still seek additional information from that original request.
No, I'm fine.
You are fine with that? Okay, I appreciate that, and then we will move on then. Thank you, Mr. Gesford. Future agenda items, basically we're repeating, or I'm repeating, May 4th is the public hearing for the redistricting. There has been a lot of effort put in to be sure that people know where to find the information and how to offer comments. I think we've discussed that at length. Mrs. Williams, thank you for bringing up the snail mail aspect of it, and thanks to Mr. Wright for reminding us that we had sent out over and above in that manner. So that's great information. I will continue to remind the public about the areas to find the information on the redistricting and how to make comments. And if anyone has any questions, please contact the board or Mr. Wright. Again, just a short comment. This is a very busy time of the year, the end of April and May and into graduation. There's just a huge amount of special events, ceremonies. The Board of Ed keeps a calendar of events. We make every effort to attend as many of these events as possible, or at least to have one member at all of these events. So we enjoy this. It's an important part of our work here, and it's very gratifying to see all the success of our students and teachers and school communities. So that brings us to board member comments. And I think I started to my left, so tonight, Mr. Ridenauer, I will start with you.
Yeah, first I want to mention that I was fortunate enough to attend the celebration at Smithsburg High School for the Blue Ribbon Award that was given to them this year to be a Blue Ribbon High School. Again, the only high school in Maryland that received that award. I think for those of us that were able to stay for the whole event, there was one thing that was particularly inspiring to me. There was a poem that was written by a Smithsburg High School student. It was called Stand Up for Smithsburg. And during the course of that poem, the young lady went through different elements of the high school experience and different elements of the student experience, starting with those people who took AP courses or those students who were involved in athletics. And she went through and had them stand up as each event was, or each participatory comment was made, have those students stand up. And by the end of her poem, every student at Smithsburg High School was on their feet. And I think what was inspiring about that is I believe a lot of kids who didn't realize that they were part of the award that was granted to Smithsburg High School recognized that they played a part in it too, in one way or another. And I think that was just an absolutely brilliant piece of work by the student. It illustrated that it takes the entire student body, the entire staff, the entire administration, the entire support staff, cafeteria workers, whatever the case might be, to have a Blue Ribbon High School. So my congratulations again to Smithsburg High School, not just for the award, but also for the event itself. It was exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fisher.
I have nothing.
Gessler.
Thank you. I did attend that same Blue Ribbon ceremony. Unfortunately, I had to got called away to work at the restaurant. So one of my staff members called ill, and I had to leave. And a fellow board member was with me, so we both had to exit. But it did seem like a very energetic crowd, and it was nice to see Washington County represented in that award. Yesterday at 1:34, I asked our superintendent to supply me with some important information that would help me make an informed vote on the Barbara Ingram Academic Hub funding request. In short, I was told that, quote, 7 years at this level of detailed data is not readily available and could take considerable staff time to assemble. I asked for the cost per pupil comparison in the last 2 years. Since I received my board packet at 10 p.m. on Friday nights after I get off work, and the Center of Education is closed on Saturdays and Sundays, it only gives me a few hours on Monday to speak to my constituents and then ask questions. If questions can't be answered, I would understand a response like, We can't get all the information to you before the board meeting, but we will do the best to help you out. That is a response that I can accept. But the response from the chair, I quote, "Remember that the superintendent doesn't work for the individual board members, but for the collective corp board, which is represented by 2 elected board officers. Only the corporate board may give direction to the Dr. Wilcox. As stated in my earlier email, I will ask the board tomorrow if the request for data is supported and if Dr. Wilcox has an idea as to the amount of staff time it might require. I just find this not acceptable. First, we were all elected to this board by the people to make the best decisions with the information available. Most of you have been on this board for a long time and might forget what it's like not to have the answers that you need. Maybe you don't care that I don't have that information, but I do. Just recently on Saturday, Mrs. Fisher asked the superintendent, have we received any drawings on the hub? But there was nothing from the chair telling her that she needed to go before the 2 elected board members. Again, on April 17th, she asked a question of Clayton. On April 6th, Mrs. Williams asked the projected numbers, no letter to her. On April 5th, Mrs. Harshman sent a letter to Clayton requesting a response, and yet nothing from the chair. So, is it just me that you're trying to suppress? Clayton, I will still ask questions when I don't have the answers. I will still ask for stats, and it'll be up to you to respond. If questions go unanswered, you can be sure a vote of no support will come from this chair. Thank you.
Mr. Gesper. Dr. Hardings.
Just one comment. I received an email it was late. It must have been late yesterday because it was in my spam from Senator Rosapep's office. He's a senator that I think Mrs. Brightman and Dr. Wilcox and I ran into him when we were in Annapolis for Mabes. I think it was Mabes Day, Mabes Lobbying Day. He remembered the conversation that we had and asked if we would be available this Friday sometime to show him some of the programs in Washington County. I haven't had a chance to respond to him yet, but I will. And once we know whether he can come and what that schedule might look like, I'll be glad to share it with all of my colleagues, and all my colleagues would be welcome. That's all I have today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mrs. Williams.
Yes. At our last business meeting, as part of their comments at the end of the meeting, 2 of my colleagues referenced board norms and expressed their unhappiness with other members of this board because board norms had been violated. At the most recent meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Communications, committee members were provided with a copy of a document labeled Board Norms 2006-2007. I assume these are the board norms to which Mrs. Brightman and Mrs. Fisher referred when admonishing their colleagues for failing to act in accordance with board norms. These norms were created and agreed to by a board in 2006-2007, not this board. This current board, these 7 members sitting here this afternoon, have never created or agreed to norms. The document presented to members of the ad hoc committee listed the norms of whatever board was sitting in 2006-2007, not this board. So to say that members are violating board norms is inaccurate. This group, this current board that was established following the 2014 election, has never participated in the process of creating board norms. Neither did the board that was formed following the 2012 election. 2 sitting board members have not been afforded the opportunity to participate in the process of creating the norms for the group of which they are a part. So to say that members are violating board norms is inaccurate. There are no agreed upon norms to violate. Without question, groups interact most effectively and are most productive when together they have decided on the guidelines, rules, and yes, the norms. They establish and they agree to follow norms. Without question, group norms should be owned by all members of a group. That way, expectations are known to all and agreed upon by all. That way, it is clear to all what is good, bad, wrong, right, allowed, not allowed. For us as a board to be cohesive, productive, and effective, there is much to be done in the creation of a positive, supportive environment in which our individual knowledge bases, talents, and strengths are used cooperatively and collaboratively in service to this community. So if we were to have board norms to guide the behavior and interaction of members, then now is the time to come together to form them. And now is the time to stop the finger pointing and marginalizing.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Harshman.
Yes, I have the board policy B, board governance and operations, and I would like to read the requirements or the responsibilities of the president. It says the president, except in cases when unable to attend, shall preside all meetings of the board and shall have a vote on motions placed before the board for action. The president shall sign such documents on behalf of the board as may be required. The president shall represent the board in deliberations with other boards, districts, or agencies unless another member of the board is so designated. Now, to back up on Mr. Guestford's request, I also have a problem with any board member not being permitted to be given information that he or she deems adequate to allow him or her to make an educated decision. The public has entrusted us with doing what's best for the community, and without the needed information, it is impossible for us to do the job that they elected us to do. I also feel that at no point in time does any board member need to be admonished by the chair about his or her behavior in anything. If there is a problem, this should be discussed in private. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harshman. I will close with my comments, and I appreciate all feedback from my colleagues. A day doesn't pass that I don't reflect on my actions and certainly strive to improve, as I hope we all do. And Mrs. Fisher, as chair of the ad hoc, I think some of the comments we've heard here tonight point to the need of the ad hoc communication committee, and I appreciate your effort in chairing that, and I look forward to more of this conversation when you report out from that committee. So thank you, and I believe we're at the end of the, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Wilcox.
Two things.
Mm-hmm.
First, the Ustream of this meeting went down tonight. Perhaps that was an omen. But we did get it recorded, and so it will be uploaded and to our website tomorrow morning. So for those people who are seeing this, they're seeing it on a delayed basis tomorrow morning. I wanted to let you know that. My understanding is that we had a problem with our content filters at some point this evening, and that caused the Ustream to not be broadcast. The only other thing I want to say is, you know, I do think people will probably watch this and wonder what's going on. I work for the corporate board, and I try to be responsive to each and every board member. The board had some norms when I was brought to this board, but this board has changed since I came. I think that if people didn't maybe hear some of Mr. Guestford's initial conversation, I want to make sure that people know that I'm responsive to the individual board members. Mike wrote to me on 4/20 at 1:34 p.m. And that day at 3:52, I responded to Mr. Guestford and said, I'll try to get the information you requested, but it may take some time because I don't think we keep it historically in an accrued manner. That meant year over year over year for the request. I'm just finishing up a full day of meetings with principals, but I'll ask a question in a few minutes. And then I did provide the answer to your second question. So, you know, I'm hopeful, Mr. Guestford, that you don't think I'm not responsive. I try to be responsive to the board members. But I will tell you that the second part of that took several hours for somebody to put together. in a busy season for us because we're looking ready to close out a year and things like that. So I just don't want you to think that I'm being obstructionist in this process. And I think earlier this evening we provided most of the information which you said. I think we gave you 5 years instead of 7 years of history. And so I want community members to know that I and the staff who report to me are going to be responsive to board members, but we do appreciate the fact that there is some process in place so that when an individual board member perhaps makes a request that's fairly difficult to fulfill, we make sure that we're all in agreement that those resources should be spent. And that's something I think this board might want to revisit. But at the same time, I didn't want you to think that any of the people sitting out there were either lazy or not motivated to serve the board. The reality is, however, they serve the board through me because I am your only employee. So I just wanted to make sure that people in the community saw that and knew that. And I will leave it back to the chair.
Very good. I appreciate
Madam President, please.
Yes,
I think one thing, Dr. Wilcox, and I would like, and if I'm out of order, you can slap the gavel.
There's precedent for
The
this.
superintendent is our employee, and the word "our" was emphasized in an email exchange. Our means the 7 of us, not any one individual. No one individual, and the reason for the norm, and I was here when this norm was established, was that we as a board at that time believed that the superintendent's time and his staff time is incredibly valuable. We pay them money to do a specific job, not just to make reports to us. And reports that require, 15, 20 minutes. Most of our people are efficient enough that they can get us answers in 15 or 20 minutes. What they may not get to us, we have to take it upon ourselves to educate ourselves as to the issues at hand. The purpose of that norm was to make certain that the superintendent was not inundated with informational requests by all members to a point that he couldn't do the job that we hired him to do. So we as individuals should not ask for reports that take 25 or 30 minutes. If you want, or 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, if you want a report like that, you can do what any member of the public does. If it's so important and you believe, deep in your gut that this is something that I want and I want it now, you can always go through a Freedom of Information request and ask for that information, but you're required to pay the commensurate amount that it costs to put that together. That was the reason for the norm. If it is something that is hugely important, bring it to the board. The board will take a vote and say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it. Or they will say, this is more than we need. Our staff shouldn't have to put the time in to do that. And as far as norms are concerned, I agree with Mrs. Williams that those norms are old. Yet, in the 4 years that I was in the chair as president and the past 3 years that Dr. Hardings and Mrs. Brightman have been in the chair, there has not been one request to revisit the norms. The only thing that was voted upon, or that the majority of the board said we need to change our norms. So that's not completely accurate. Mrs. Brightman has started this the ad hoc committee on communication. Perhaps some of these issues can be addressed at that point. But at this point in time, there has not been a request to address norms that has been voted upon and agreed upon by this board.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenauer. We are now at the end of the agenda, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Like 2 weeks ago, this